China is preparing a supersonic spy drone unit, leaked U.S. military assessment reportedly says. Now, all of these leaks that have been going on, a lot of folks are questioning them because there's very convenient information getting put out right now. And of course, the world situation now couldn't be any worse. And I'm not trying to exaggerate or anything. It's getting really, really bad. It says a leaked U.S. military assessment claims that the Chinese military could soon deploy a high-altitude spy drone that travels at least 3 times the speed of sound, according to the report. The Washington Post first reported about the leaked assessment into China's ability to conduct surveillance operations on Tuesday. The secret assessment by the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency indicated that technological advances made by the Chinese military could help it target U.S. warships and Taiwan and military bases in the region. According to the Post, the document included satellite imagery dated August 9th over the Luan airfield and the Dashan County, showing 2 WZ-8 rocket-propelled reconnaissance drones. The air base sits in eastern China, about 350 miles inland from Shanghai. Part of a cutting-edge surveillance system, the drones could help China gather real-time mapping data to inform strategy or carry out future missile strikes. So this could be something that would help them actually do what we've been talking about, is how they've been scanning everything and actually attack things in real time with either AI or autonomous drones or one of their drone carriers sending off suicide drones. So we'll talk about this and much, much more on tonight's show with all of the current events. We'll talk about financial collapse, what some are saying, and then, of course, we'll talk about all of the other crazy things that have gone on in the last 24 hours. We'll be right back right after this. Nothing in this show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough. All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, a.k.a. Marf, and this is Marfoogle News. Today, we've got a lot to cover. And if you are new here, remember you can always go over to marfooglenews.com and you can find every single article, tweet, video, picture, document. All you have to do is look for today's thumbnail, the end of the dollar, almost done, and then click on it. You will find that you'll see every single article, tweet, video, picture, document, and reference that we make here today will have a bibliography available at your fingertips. Also, there is an overflow of web content. That is all the stuff that we could not fit into the show or the stuff that could not go on this platform. So make sure to go check that out, and thank you for doing so. It's a lot of work to put together, so make sure to utilize it. It is there for you, and it is there for free. And make sure to go over to marfooglenews.com/friends and go check out our mods. They do an awesome job of keeping the chat peaceful. So make sure to return the favor by going and subscribing. Very easy. Just click the red bell, the red button, and then you'll be subscribed. All right. And then let's bring in my co-host/internet brother, Dex James. What is going on and how are you doing today?
Hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I'm doing just fine.
Sorry, guys. I've got like a frog in my throat tonight. Something triggered my lungs here. I don't know what it is. And then going back to this first piece, I wonder if this thing can actually launch other objects. So we know that they tested some sort of hypersonic thing that actually launched a hypersonic glide vehicle Could something like this also be used for something like a fractional orbital bombardment system attack type of thing, as far as go around the world? Or could this thing circle around the world at the 3 times the speed of sound and just keep going? And, of course, hit us with something at the same time. Dex, what do you think about this whole surveillance thing? So instead of predators above us, the U.S. watching us, now China is going to be watching the world with their high-tech stuff.
Well, it sounds very much like the what was it, the SR-71 that we had, that was a high altitude, supersonic. I think it did Mach 3. And, basically whenever it needed to, if something fired upon it, all it had to do was speed up and just keep going. Nothing could really catch it. I think it sounds like they're building something very similar, but it's probably going to be more autonomous. I don't know if it's actually flown versus being more of a drone type device, but nonetheless, we're talking a very high speed device, probably very high altitude, just like we saw with the old SR-71 and other platforms that have since replaced it. So I think that's probably the path they're headed down with this. At least that's what the leak sort of talks about. So and again, we have to take all of that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, if just in case you're wondering what the SR-71 is, it's straight up the X-Men jet, right? Or what the X-Men jet is inspired by. So yeah, that's the Blackbird SR-71. Pretty crazy stuff. And if China now has that, well, I wonder how they have that, right? Do you think that it's? We haven't seen this thing, right? There's no images, so they could have directly copied it from one of our ships or one of our things. Or they could have even hacked into our systems, and they're going to put one out in public before we put out ours. Ours could probably be top secret. I guarantee we have something like this. The fact is, though, that China is now producing things we never thought or at least we didn't think that they were going to be producing now. We're in a really crazy time. Everyone is talking about AI, the singularity, Terminator, all of the different wars that are going on right now. But of course, all this at the same time, all of these agendas are, being put in place, and people really do not see these coming. All of you do, so it's kind of like beating a dead horse to talk to you guys about it. But I do think that we have, new viewers every night, and I think that it's like people are constantly waking up and realizing what is actually happening. In my opinion, all of this is part of, this is all part of a huger, way bigger picture. And that bigger picture is, in their minds, these people at the very, very top, they think that they actually believe that they are helping things, that they are, they're heroes for the earth. They believe that they're helping, and they have to make the tough decision, like Sophie's Choice or something. They believe that they have to make the tough decisions because we won't, right? So they have to make decisions that are going to harm us, but yet they won't affect them, right? That's the messed up part about it. That's the big problem. When you actually look at some of the views that some of these ultra rich have, you can see how they would kind of make sense. Even if I don't know if you guys have seen the show Utopia, but Utopia was back in 2012, wrote by Gillian Flynn, which, by the way, found out some weird things about the author, that she possibly was on that island with EpiPen. So it was kind of weird to hear that rumor, because if you saw Utopia, you know what I'm talking about. It was a very creepy theory. Back in 2012, they did a show putting that in concrete, that 2012 they were talking about this stuff. And now you fast forward to 2020 when all of this CV stuff happened, and it's kind of crazy to see the plot of Utopia, half of it, at least the setup for it, playing out in a show that's 10 years old. But in that show, they talk about how they put it in both shows, the 2020 version that got canceled and the 2012, is how they put it is, if they don't take anyone's lives right now, and if they did enough good things to reduce our population for the future, that the world would be able to live happier. So as Mr. Gates said a while back, he said, if we do a really good job with and if we do a really good job with healthcare, that we'll be able to reduce the population by 15%. Now, some could go, well, by healthcare, he means, parenting, Planned Parenthood and things like that. But he also said with new Vs, we will be able to reduce the population. And people were like, what the heck? How do you reduce something by adding one of those in? It's just kind of weird that that human beings, and men in specific, their sperm counts have gone down over the last 5 decades, and there really isn't much of an explanation other than our food and everything that we have has been corporatized and made in these factories that have who knows what in them. We now have genetically modified foods, which all of these things went through steps to get approved and double approved, and somebody got their pocket, washed, and then they got approved. And then all of a sudden, people are eating almost everything that they're eating is possibly dangerous. It's a crazy thing to think about that China is now on the top of all of this technologically advanced gear and military equipment, considering their family values and the things that they believe in and the way that they run their country. That people are actually talking about financial collapse of the dollar and BRICS and the Chinese yuan possibly, superseding the dollar. This is a scary time to live in. So one thing is, we can't exactly control what is going to happen, but we can control how we respond to it. And I think that people will be much, 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 much better off if they at least know that it is coming. As far as these drones, very scary things. Very, very crazy. And then Dex, do you want to talk about the Mexican president accuses Pentagon of spying, vows to restrict military information?
Wow. So we're dealing with a lot of damage control, apparently. We talked about this with SK, and it came out that others, potentially from these leaked documents that they were being spied upon. And so again, one of our allies, Mexico, is saying, coming out from that leaked document that the information was showing that we were, basically spying on him or listening in and trying to gather information and intel that was part of that. So they're kind of upset, and probably rightfully so. At least they seem to be taking a much more stern position with it than, say, SK did, which sort of said, well, we don't know if it's true or not, but we'll definitely want to talk to you when you're done investigating it. But the president of Mexico is basically coming out and saying they're going to restrict any more information that they share with us over this, because they don't think that it's right that we were spying on them.
So this is yet another country that has basically said that they're distancing themselves from the U.S. You can see it in slow-mo, but you can also see this happening pretty fast, where the U.S. looks really bad to the globe, and you have, of course, China trying to step in whatever place it can with people. I mean, look at the Macron thing. I mean, do people really not see that right after Macron met with Xi, all of a sudden he makes a statement that he's going to distance himself from the U.S.? I mean, I know that the French, it's been a joke forever that the French really don't like Americans, but I mean, we're talking about people switching sides that, folks that we normally wouldn't worry about. We might have to right now because a lot of things are going wrong. The leaks, the first half of the leaks anyways, if those are true, if all of the leaks are true, I highly doubt some of the ones that are very convenient are, but if any of these leaks are true, it did not help the U.S. The very first leaks were very, very hurtful to the U.S. So unless the U.S. or parts of it that are infiltrated are sharing or leaking these own things to hurt us, it's usually it's probably somebody who wants to hurt us. In the later leaked documents, it seems like they didn't want to let a good disaster go to waste, so they purposely leaked who knows what. That's just my opinion. Stuff that would back up their narrative. We are in wartime right now with Russia, with China, a cold conflict with China, essentially. We have a hot proxy war going with Russia. So there's going to be tons of Ganda, and we don't really have a way to, pick apart what exactly is true. So that's why everybody needs to have a cup of salt, right on their dinner table. Let's see here. So Mexican president, that's one to add. I think that's 7 now. 7 countries that are either possibly going neutral or possibly having problems with the U.S. now over certain things that have been said. And then UN expresses concern to U.S. over spying reports. Dex, we also have the UN talking about this.
That's correct.
Go ahead.
That's correct. So they are also now on the list, they being the UN. So the spokesperson said, hey, based on what's coming out, it says that the reports that Washington actually spied on Secretary General Antonio Guterres and other senior UN officials. So that's, we're basically lining up a list of what were, neutral or allies and turning them into potential either enemies or in a very bad position with us. This is not good. There's a lot of damage control that's probably been going on since these first made it out of the social networks where they originally happened. I think they just started scrambling. I know they originally tried to see if they could delete it all, but that never works. You can't delete something once it's out there on the internet, so to speak. So, but I think they immediately have had to deal with all sorts of damage control over these leaks, and we probably don't even, we're probably only getting just a little bit of what's going on these back channel conversations that they're having to deal with. Would be my assumption, because we don't always get the full picture.
And one of the quotes here says, we have now officially expressed to the host country our concern regarding the recent reports that the communications of the Secretary General and the other senior UN officials have been the subject of surveillance and interference by the U.S. government. What's funny is that the UN and all of these other countries, they know what the U.S. does. Everybody knows what the U.S. does. So it's like the leaks were put out there to make it, there's no plausible deniability if they consider these to be real, right? So this is just hurting us. This is hurting us publicly, and everyone expects it to hurt us. Essentially, these documents, at least the first batch, made us look really, really bad. And it's something that most Americans know, especially since Snowden came out and told us that we're all being spied on. Our cameras on our phones are accessible from NSA office. In fact, Macron's cell phone or Trudeau's cell phone is accessible from NSA. Like this is stuff that we've known for 10 years. And after about a year, people really quieted down. I mean, there were people like us in our community that always followed this stuff. But the majority of regular people, they just went about their lives. They didn't care that the government was spying on us. But they really don't get the principle of what our whole country was founded on in the first place either. That's why you see all of this stuff like, trying to take weapons away from people. I don't think people realize like why we had the Second Amendment in the first place. Look at what happened in World War II. You could have a leader, you could have one leader go in or one group of people switched in, and it can turn into tyranny. And some believe it's already done so. So very, it's just crazy to see that the U.S. is now not looking good. It kind of seems like they're setting us up to fall. Okay, and then let's see here. Yeah, the UN and Mexico on top of France, on top of South Korea, on top of the Philippines, and there's 3 more actually. And I was trying to remember the other. South Africa? No, I'll think of it. And then suspect in Japan, prime minister attack may have had election grudge. Really? So this is the narrative that has come out. It says a 24-year-old man who allegedly threw an explosive at Prime Minister Fumio Kishida wanted to be a politician and believed that he was unfairly blocked from running for Japan's parliament by an age requirement, according to media reports and social media posts that appeared to be his. Okay, so he wasn't saying that it was like, that it was squirrely. He was talking about the age requirement. this sounds like something they were like, yeah, he's 24, he's not old enough. Dex, does this sound a little suspect? Literally the suspect?
My first thought when this came up was it was, a narrative that was produced to, put the story to bed, so to speak, and give some sort of reason behind it that everybody would just say, oh, okay, move on, as opposed to it being something bigger. But I don't know. I mean, we had a weird story for the guy who made the shoddy and took out Abe too. So, I don't know if we don't know if that's real or if it's just a cover story. So, any of those things could be true, and any of those things could just be, like we said, like I said, a cover story. But it certainly seemed a little weird.
Yeah, as far as they say that he wanted to throw a pipe explosive at the president because he couldn't run because he was just too young, right? Instead of like maybe wait a couple years. I don't know. It sounds like wag the dog story or something. And then Pentagon explains that the mysterious Russian tank at a truck stop in Louisiana, saying it was disarmed and it was going to an Army training center. So we actually covered this previously. It was a Russian T-90A tank was left in Roanoke, Louisiana, which is pretty crazy to just see this out and about. And especially when you see like, UKR flags on it or different things spray painted and Russian writing. It says the mysterious Russian tank that appeared at a truck stop in Louisiana was disarmed and on its way to a U.S. Army training center. The Pentagon told the War Zone on Tuesday. Sue Go, a Pentagon spokesperson, told the military publication that the Russian T-90A tank was being taken to Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Harford County, Maryland, when the truck that was transporting it broke down on Interstate 10 highway. Goff said that the mechanical issue with the truck has been fixed and the tank is, quote, secure. The tank's explosive reactive armor is inert, and it was not armed or carrying any dangerous material and at no point posed a risk to the public. I honestly, most of the people I talked to about this did not think that this posed a threat. It was more like, why is there a Russian tank in the U.S.? So that is the story they're going with here. It actually makes sense. Do you believe it? Do you not believe it? Let me know in the comments down below. Dex, and then this is the same tank, right? This isn't a different tank from...
It's the same one. I think the biggest concern was everybody's like, it's just sitting in this parking lot. Nobody knew where it came from, why it was there. And the fact that it had that reactive armor plating on it, and you couldn't, I guess, tell unless you were to, thoroughly investigate it if it actually was armed. Because those plates are, explosives, and when a shell is coming in, it basically explodes back, trying to push back the shell. That's how that technology works, and it, that was a big concern to a lot of people. It was clear that there was no bang bang on top of it that had been removed, but all the armor plates were still there.
Yeah, most people were wondering. By the way, it kind of looks like there's 9, 9, and 9. I guess if you blow it up and it's upside down, it's something. Joe, I'm not even going to read that. I don't need to make a bigger deal out of it. Nothing. It was honestly, it's okay. Thank you for that. Everybody has bad days and everybody has, off days. So no worries. And I even told chat yesterday, like, if anybody in the Foogle fam, especially if you guys come to chat every day, if I don't like when chat teams up on somebody who, everybody gets on one person or this person or that person. People can have off days, and since I started this channel, I've let people, I've given people chances to have bad days and stuff. Everybody makes mistakes. And everybody has bad days. So I think that we should realize that we're all human and then give that human a chance. And if we have that kind of environment, I think that everybody will feel a whole lot better here. And it will give you guys some freedom to have bad days and to be able to have people around you that care and will make that day better. We just don't do drama. And then, of course, Sometimes there's issues with just people getting modded, muted. As adults, nobody likes being muted or silenced. That's just something that goes with it. But muting is a way of our mods basically saying, hey, whatever comment that was, that goes against kind of our basic rules. The basic rules are there for a reason, because we're trying to run the channel and trying to keep the channel alive. And we're also partly responsible for stuff that is said. So we also have to make sure that we are keeping this channel around for the many who actually do appreciate it. It's not for people that are fans of me or even Dex. Really, people get the most out of the other people in chat, the people in the community, and able to meet other people. You do have to realize most people here do not have people in real life they can talk to about this stuff. And you guys know this is true because you cannot talk about any of this at work. If you talk about these stories, you may be able to, depending on where you live and like how cool your job is. But many people cannot go to the office and then give their opinions on anything political, on anything this or that, because they can get fired. I got fired because people found out I was on the right-leaning side of things. I mean, it was stupid. There was no other. They can give you whatever excuse. In Washington, it's an at-will state, so they can just can you. It doesn't matter. But they can give you whatever excuse they want. Like, we're just going in a different direction. Come on. So I'm just saying this should be a peaceful place, and I do appreciate when, everybody has bad days. Everybody is grumpy sometimes. And when grown adults get muted, it's natural to be offended. But I will always side with my mods, and then usually my mods will screenshot. They'll make sure that they get what happened, and then we go over it. And of course, if it was done in wrong, then we fix it. All right, and then North Korea claims first ever military spy satellite ready for launch, which would violate UN resolutions. So now they have a spy satellite that is first ever military spy satellite. We'll talk about that here in just a second. Before we do, for the good of the channel, if you guys haven't already, and for the good of your life, if you don't have a generator, I highly recommend getting a solar generator. It's definitely great to have both gas and solar, but if you were to get one and you really do want something that is a great thing to have, is a solar generator, because once you have panels, if you get a package with panels, you have power as long as you have sun. So you have unlimited power as long as the day turns over, as long as that sun rises. Even on overcast days, you can get power and then store that power for whenever you need it. They have the new Flex Tactical. This isn't even out yet. This is pre-order. This is actually, this was designed with help from the U.S. Air Force and the Air Force Research Laboratory. So this thing is really awesome. It is a Flex 1500 on steroids. This thing even has a built-in heater for extreme cold temperatures. It is absolutely awesome. Most people are going to go for the X2. This is actually, they still have them in stock. They do have our special discount on this, and there may be a stacking sale on top of that. This is built in, so the battery is built in, but it's a lithium ion phosphate battery, so it lasts longer than the traditional lithium ion. This one brags that you could use it for every day, 16 years from full to empty, and it will still have 80% of its capacity after that time period. So basically, if you're not using it every day, this thing will last as long as a person. So make sure to go check that out. That's the X2, and the LT is also on sale. And then, of course, the Flex 1500 is the modular system that works like Legos. This can be altered. It can be completely changed as far as it can actually be, you can add in a brick that turns it into a UPS or uninterrupted power supply. You can add in batteries. You can add in up to 96 batteries to this. So you can either take it with you portable to power drills or to go to the cabin and play Xbox in the woods, or you could actually use it for a blackout, whatever it is, or you could have this at home as a full-on home setup. So go over to marfoogle.com/energy, INERGY, and make sure to use the code Marfoogle because that will get you our special discount and it will give us credit. That way you give us a small commission of your purchase, and then it helps us reinforce the growth of our channel and it helps us live. So thank you, everybody that ends up supporting us through any of our affiliates. Appreciate it. And then going back to the spy satellite, North Korea, which you will see in a future story here in a second. In fact, Dex, do we have the story about NK, about them supplying NK? Or is that in this one?
It's later. It's from Vlad's side.
Okay, so we have a story later that we'll talk about, but this kind of fits in with that, and I think North Korea could be very well used. They're a puppet, and they could be used in a massive Fantastic Freddy. It says that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un announced that his country will launch its first ever military spy satellite with the launch date undisclosed. The military reconnaissance satellite number 1 has already been built, and Kim ordered officials to speed up preparations for its launch. Now, satellites like this could also deliver EMPs, but they already have a satellite. In fact, the satellite that goes over the U.S. on a regular basis, I believe it's like once every 2 days or once every day. So they already have the ability to hit us with a super EMP weapon. Now they're going to have an actual military reconnaissance satellite. Kim addressed the satellite plans, if they're telling the truth, mind you. It says Kim addressed the satellite plans during a visit to the North Korean Aerospace Agency Tuesday. He stressed the need for a satellite as part of ensuring that the country effectively uses its nuclear-capable missiles. He cited what is described as serious security threats posed by the most hostile rhetoric and explicit action from the United States and South Korea. So they have whatever excuse they want. If you wanted to do devil's advocate, obviously they are a hermit state, and everybody in NATO and all of our allies, look at them as that they shouldn't be here. So I just wonder what goes through their heads, or if they are just strictly a puppet. I'm sure there's a lot of illegal things done there. I'm absolutely sure. I guarantee there is illegal things going on there that is actually funded by other countries. And who knows, our own 3-letter agencies could be building stuff that they can't build here in NK. There's a whole shroud of mystery around NK. But later on in a story involving Russia, it does kind of seem like this North Korea might be used as a tool. Dex, did you want to add some insight into this?
Certainly. So, the other thing we did cover a while back, that the test launch they did for this future satellite that they're talking about, and they had launched and took pictures, and they took pictures of a couple of cities in SK, and the pictures were horrible. They were like black and white and grainy, and everybody made fun of them. And that's what everybody does. It's like, oh, it's low yield. They didn't launch anything really significant when they tested their nukes. It was very low. Well, no, it's actually probably correct for an EMP. Like, pay attention. So everybody balked at the fact that their test had these low res images, but what they said is, hey, it was a test. We were doing this one time. It was sort of a throwaway, and why would we use a very expensive camera for that? Now, I'm not saying that they're telling the truth when they say this. Maybe that's all they could afford. But at the same time, it also makes sense that they wouldn't put their high-end camera on a test mission if they can't afford to just continue launching and throwing away equipment like that. So anyway, long story short, they have been on this path.
I'm sorry, I just saw the little tiny table
to launch this. Yeah, that thing is funny, isn't it?
I thought he was a giant for a second. Sorry.
Oh no, that's how they cost cut all through the country. It's everything's smaller, makes everybody look bigger. But long story short, they are saying they're actually going to launch this. Now, I think the biggest worry, in my opinion, is if it's really a satellite or if this launch is a FOBS, because in fractional orbital bombardment system is the type of launch you would use to launch something that would be undetected, that would then launch in the atmosphere like an EMP. And we know they've done this in the past with other satellites that they've launched. We know they have that capability. and it would be easy to, and more likely to be disguised as, hey, we're just launching a satellite, because that's the trajectory it would take. That's the whole point of a fob system, is it goes up, it looks like a satellite launch, it goes around the globe, it comes up from the south, in the high atmosphere, coming up from our south, where we don't pay attention. We pay attention to the north because we're looking for ICBMs. We pay attention to the east and west because we're looking for ICBMs. We're not looking for these, space launches from the south. So that's the whole point. That's the worry I would have with any launch that they would do, especially one that they would be calling a space launch.
Yeah, and as far as the as far as like the fractional orbital bombardment system, like Dex said years ago when they did these low yield nukes, they essentially said that they failed, but then later on, pretty much every government that commented on, the UK, Russia, China, and the US, and Canada's government, and Australia's government commented on it, that was actually a success. So who knows, that it could have been put through the media too, but with this, I just wonder, what it's actually going to be used for. But maybe it's just a really tiny satellite, like it's this big. In fact, I think it might be on his desk right now. I don't know why. That's just that. It looks like one of those Regal desks. I was hoping for like a little tiny gold nameplate for maybe this is his daughter's like office. She sits there during the day, and he has her role play being the leader of the Hermit Nation. I've never seen a picture with him smoking. He's smoking with an old school ashtray. Look at the colors in North Korea. It's weird. Everything about North Korea is fascinating. Obviously, it's a, really nasty. They run their thing nasty, but look at this. It's like it's almost got a Cuba vibe or something, because everything is older. I mean, these look like 1970s chairs, and I'm sure they have a lot of older stuff. This looks like something that you would get at the Goodwill from the 70s or something. And obviously they've got all their sanctions and different things. And then get ready, Taiwan civilians train for Chinese invasion. By the way, my mods, speaking of which, my mods, if we don't, it's totally okay if you didn't know, but we don't talk badly about other creators, even if those creators have talked badly about us. So if you do want to badmouth the creator, you can feel free to go to their channel. I think in general, sometimes those comments, even if it was absolutely guaranteed correct, there's just no place for it. There's no reason for it. Honestly, YouTube is a voluntary thing, and the same way I look at our channel, like if you don't like my stuff, then you don't have to watch. It's voluntary. If you don't like somebody's stuff, you don't have to watch them. Get ready, Taiwan civilians train for Chinese invasion. So it says that physician Lin Yu-ting has taken time out of her weekend to learn civilian defense tips so she can relay them to her 2 young children in case that China invades self-ruled Taiwan. There are no weapons, just vital training on how to react to China's hybrid warfare. The classes are part of a growing Taiwanese urgency to be ready for a worst-case scenario after seeing the UKR conflict from afar and enduring 2 rounds of Chinese drills in the past year, including exercises that ended last week. It says, when there's a possibility of a war, I think we should get prepared, said 45-year-old Lin, who was attending the Kuma Academy's classes in Taipei. Being on the front line isn't the only way to help, she said, adding that her 8 and 12-year-old children should know what to do in a crisis. Kuma's instructors offer practical tips on evacuation, preparations, and such as finding the nearest air raid shelter and what to pack in emergency go bags. Surprisingly enough, I bet that even if we were super close, like we knew we were going to be in a physical war here on our soil, I almost guarantee you our government would not give us these kind of things. For whatever reason, in the prepper niche, it is obviously it's looked down upon. People say it's crazy because they have put a narrative to it that if you are prepping, that you are paranoid. That if you're worried about this kind of stuff, that you're out of place. Yet this stuff happens to every single country, and it happens to us, and and there's, you know, local and crazy disasters that happen all over the country at all times. Why is it considered crazy? Well, if you dig really deep on that, and we might do a show at some point, you go back to what CIA and other agencies did to make people, to label people that essentially were self-reliant. They don't want people self-reliant. They don't want people being able to go off grid. They need us on grid. They need us on everything. They need us reliant on every system. Otherwise, if we're not, how would you control a person like that? That would be essentially a dissident. But when you look at everything else, how people look at life insurance, car insurance, rental insurance, you know, you don't get car insurance because you know you're going to get in an accident. You get it because you think you may. Same thing with prepping. Prepping and having things ready is a great thing. What I find really kind of angering is that almost every other country does these kind of things in their country where they actually teach them. Now, they have one of the most, I guess one of the highest reasons, or one of the biggest reasons to actually do this. But, you know, why don't all sorts of other countries are actually training in schools? Kids should know. You know what we're focused on training about? We're training on, you know, on what other people's feelings matter to you. Like, you know, we're teaching feelings right now. Well, others are actually teaching, you know, take away information that can be used to save people's lives. So the organizers say that they are building a first line of psychic defense against Chinese narratives, trying to sow distrust in Taiwan's democratic system and its defensive capabilities. The day-long classes, which cost 1,000 Taiwanese dollars, end with emergency medical training such as how to apply tourniquets and stuff wounds with bandages. So, again, it looks like they're starting to get ready now. And then the U.S. is about to blow up a fake warship in the South China Sea, but naval rivalry with Beijing is very real and growing. It says as a part of a joint military exercise with the Philippines, the U.S. Navy is slated to sink a mock warship on April 26th, 2023 in the South China Sea. The live-fire drill is not a response to increased tensions with China over Taiwan. Both the U.S. and the Philippines have stressed. But either way, Beijing isn't happy, responding by holding its own staged military event involving actual warships and fighter jets deployed around Taiwan, a self-governed island that Beijing claims as its own. A tit-for-tat war games underscore a reality that U.S. presidents have increasingly had to contend with the 21st century has drawn on. More than a century after President Theodore Roosevelt made the United States the preeminent maritime power in the Pacific, that position is now under threat. China is seeking to displace it. As a scholar of East Asian security and maritime disputes, I believe that a growing rivalry between the U.S. and China over dominance of the Pacific has the potential to define geopolitics in the Indo-Pacific region for the next half century. Already, ongoing maritime disputes pit China against several Asian countries. For example, China regularly challenges the maritime rights of Vietnam, the Philippines, and Malaysia in the South China Sea, and Japan in the East China Sea. But the disputed waters are also a huge strategic importance to the U.S. It is where China is flexing its growing military might in the face of U.S. allies and partners, notably Taiwan, which the U.S. is committed to defend. If a war between China and the U.S. is going to happen, I believe that the South China Sea is likely to be a major theater, with Chinese aggression towards Taiwan being the spark. So what's really crazy about this is they have been doing this for a long time. So I'm glad that we're catching up. They actually were hitting our fake versions of our carriers and our destroyers and our ships. And now we have kind of the first news of us doing it. Let's see here. It said South China Sea, a hotbed of sovereignty disputes between China. It kind of shows you where all of this is going down. And let me get down. let's see here. I wanted to get, let's see. There was a good part down here. So the Spratly Islands, which I've covered since they didn't exist, the artificial islands in the South China Sea provide China with military capabilities far beyond the mainland alone. These outposts can be used to help counter and fight the U.S. and its allies, for example, in a war over Taiwan. While the U.S. is not itself a claimant in the South China Sea disputes, the waters there remain a significant priority for the national security interests of Washington, too. It is why the U.S. and its allies conduct freedom of navigation missions through the South China Sea and engage in naval exercises such as the one taking place in April 2023. It says, with China playing by a different set of rules than the U.S. and its allies in the region, the risk of clashes at sea is very real. It could even lead to conflict between the two most powerful countries in the world today. So if you have been in this for a while, then you've probably heard about some of the kind of theories and rumors of how something would start. It could be a ship that is possibly not even the ship that they say it is. It's painted like a ship, attack another ship, and then start an all-out war over a Navy ship like this in one of the straits. In fact, I think the example used by a gentleman years ago was in the Strait of Hormuz, that whatever ship, say Chinese, for example, a Chinese ship sinks an American ship. But it turns out that that's not a Chinese ship, it's an American ship painted as a Chinese ship, right? Something like that. So there's also the slight possibility that there could be a setup like that something like this could happen. But also I want to point out, this article points out what I've said for 5 years since they started this, that those islands are forward operating bases, and they are made, and they were made to help them in their military advantages. So they are going to use them in the future conflict. I don't even, in my mind, I don't even consider, World War III not happening even a thing. I believe we're already in World War III, and I think that most people are starting to see that. And it's just a matter of if you believe World War III is the end of the world or a means to start the new one. I think it is the latter. Dex, they're practicing on, we're practicing on ships that look like theirs now.
Yeah, that's a nice change, I guess, since we've seen so much of what they've done, both on their land and as well as in water, on their tests. But the interesting thing, a couple of interesting things here, to think about is
Dex, did your mic turn off? Are we still on? You guys, are you still reading me? Am I still here? Okay, they said they got Dex. So, okay, you're back.
Can you hear me?
I didn't see any. Yeah, I can hear you. And I didn't see anything on the status of the stream, so I thought I was down too. So thank you.
No, I think it was my internet went down. I just flipped over to my backup. So
by the way,
something must have happened here.
We have a severe storm warning and lightning a mile away, or at least an hour ago. It was actually one of the craziest warnings I've ever gotten on my phone. So I actually charged all of our generators just in case. This house loses power all the time. We've lost power like 8 times now in the last 2 years. I don't know if it's because it's old or bad wiring, but again, it's my house has lost power where the other side of the street has not. And then, Dex, you were talking about how they're practicing on the ships that look like Chinese ships now, full life-size replicas, right?
Right. So, and the other thing I was going to make note of is, the dynamics that have changed across this area. I mean, think about this. If tomorrow, or a futuristic tomorrow when this happens, some sort of conflict between us and Xi breaks out, we could actually be allied with Vietnam. We can be, obviously, we're already allied very strongly right now with the Philippines. So that's kind of, just to think about where we were with the country of Vietnam many years ago versus today, right? And so that's kind of an interesting shift. And then as it relates to the Philippines, Bongbong Marcos, who is this grandchild, I think, of Ferdinand Marcos, who was I guess he was like more like a dictator back in the day. But the interesting thing is he's the new president there. If you guys remember, we used to talk a lot about Rodrigo Duterte, I believe is how you say that. He was the previous one. So the previous president of the Philippines actually sided with Xi all the time. So he actually, during his reign, they actually shifted everything towards Xi and supporting China. And with the new president, obviously, as seen by all of the expansions and the re-engagements with our military and these huge drills that we're now doing, all of that, it's kind of like a big flip around. It's been a big shift from their political power, so to speak, but it's also shifted from who they're aligning themselves with. And I think Rodrigo was in from the 16 to 22, so he was there for quite a while. But now in 2022 is when Bongbong Marcos took over the Philippines.
Hammer Girl says being allies with Vietnam is like getting back together with your ex-wife. Well, I guess it depends on how you ended it with your ex-wife. I guess that's sort of very specific. Amish decimated by BlackRock. I kind of feel like I've covered something around that. Evening, Marv. Carol, Will You Still Remember Me? Isn't that a song? Old, like 1940s song or something? But speaking of Carol, thank you so much for the back-to-back super stickers. Thank you for the thumbs up. And thank you, Zenwin AZ. Appreciate your support. Thank you for the super sticker. Charles Goki, how's the spider situation? Oh, it was nothing. It left a little red dot, and it was like one day. If you guys don't know what they're talking about, is I got bit on the foot live, and I grabbed toilet paper and I literally smushed it. I showed you guys. That was a nasty big false widow. But I've been bit by them a bunch, so it doesn't really do anything to me. The first time it did, though. Let's start a $4.99 rally for random. Andrew Gordon, you don't have to do that, but thank you so much for your support, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Andrew. I still have a frog in my throat. And then Taiwan to buy 400 U.S. anti-ship missiles to face China threat. It will really be crazy if this does go off really soon before Vlad finishes theirs. Some folks think that the Russia-UKR thing will immediately settle, like it's just going to be over, and then the day after that China is going to do the Taiwan thing, and this will just keep going. I've talked to some people that believe that this is, of course, the military-industrial complex, and this is just a way to move the money and move it all the way through. What's crazy to me is since 2019, our entire globe got decimated financially. And if they were to really, reset everything, it would kind of look like what it does now. And everybody it seems like we're in kind of some sort of normalcy now. And, when they did all of those checks that they gave out and the biggest stimulus in the world, and they just took trillions and trillions of dollars and added it to our debt. Most people are not financial experts, and they just, people thought, we're back to normal. There is no normal, and this is kind of like, it's not lipstick on a pig. It's more like, it's like they're putting a cardboard facade, kind of like North Korea does in their grocery stores, and they're showing you that the grocery store is full and has lots of fruit and produce, when really it's empty and barren. And I'm not trying to be a pessimist when I say this. If you're following everything that's happening and looking at what's happening with the banks and everything else, it's hard not to think that this is not being done on purpose and that everything is about to go downhill really fast. Now, one way that they possibly could get us out of this strategically, and maybe this was part of the plan all along, is to go to a massive war. The U.S. right now is not directly involved. I mean, they are directly involved, but they are not directly sending thousands of troops into a war. They're sending them to the borders for the future war that is coming. But that war will produce a lot of money. And Taiwan is, I wonder if this is going to go down sooner than everybody thinks. My personal opinion is that this is going to start in 2023, this year, in the next 8 months. What do you guys think? And it says Taiwan will buy as many as 400 U.S. land-launched Harpoon missiles in the face of rising threat from China, Bloomberg News reported on Monday, citing a trade group's leader and people familiar with the issue. The Pentagon announced the $1.7 billion contract for 400 of the anti-ship missiles on April 7th without naming the buyer, saying production was expected to be completed by March 2029. Says the Pentagon declined to comment directly on the deal, but said the United States makes available to Taiwan defense articles and services necessary to enable it to maintain sufficient self-defense capability. So first of all, Taiwan is going to be a lot like UKR. It will have zero chance of any kind of survival if the U.S. or Japan or others do not come in there and help. And I think Japan partly knows that. The only reason I think Japan doesn't want them getting taken over is because they think that they're going to be next. Japan is on China's list. So, Dex, what do you think about this?
Well, the silver lining here for sure is that they're actually paying for it, unlike what we do to UKR, where we just give it away. So yes, kudos to them for ponying up $1.7 billion to our military industrial complex. I'm sure they are happy to see that money flow in. But at the same time, I'm glad it's coming from their pocketbook and not from ours.
Well, and Bloomberg said Taiwan was the buyer. They said that they didn't name the buyer, this and that. I just wonder if the $1.7 billion hopefully did come from their pocketbook. But I assume they have it. They're good for it. They make 80% of the world's microchips, so, or maybe it was done in a deal. Maybe they got a discount. They used code Save Taiwan. All right. And Medvedev threatens Russia will arm North Korea if South Korea supplies arm to UKR. Exactly what I was talking about earlier. I mean, you can kind of see it there. Real quick, I want to remind you, go over to marfooglenews.com/EMP. You can put one of these in your cars, trucks, ATVs, motorcycles, or boats and protect it not only against EMP strike, but against a CME or a Carrington-level natural event coming from the sun. It can ground the signal from either all three phases of an EMP, E1, E2, and E3, or a CME in less than 500 trillionths of a second before it can fry your car, your truck, your boat, your generators, your house, whatever you decide to protect, they most likely have a device for. It's the same company that's outfitting agencies like DHS, DOD, and now they are on the DEMSO team helping protect the Texas grid. It's Keystone military tested, and it could save your life. So go over to marfooglenews.com/EMP. You'll get $50 off per device, and that stacks on top of any sale that they do. So it's a really good time to go. They have tons of different packages put together right now, especially April through July. There's a lot of stuff going on over there. So make sure to go check it out. marfooglenews.com/EMP. Thank you for supporting independent media at the same time as protecting yourself. And then, so now Medvedev, former prime minister, former president of Russia, deputy secretary of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, has begun threatening that the aggressor country would supply Russian weapons to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea if South Korea provided weapons to UKR. It said that Medvedev was outraged that South Korea seemed to assure that it would not supply weapons to UKR and now has changed its mind. says, I wonder what the inhabitants of this country will say when they see the latest samples of Russian weapons from their closest neighbors, our partners from the DPRK, Medvedev threatened. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol said South Korea might extend its support for UKR beyond humanitarian and economic aid if UKR suffers another large-scale civilian attack. So, minus what they just said here, if this does take any effect, we're probably going to see a large-scale civilian attack, or at least that's how media will portray it. They will show civilians, or at least they'll show you an area and say this was chock full of civilians. And then in South Korea, they're able to tell their people, well, they hit a civilian center. We're going to help them. And then they pump out their stuff. That's just what I see happening here. They always set something up and they put it out. Well, if this happens, then we will do something. 99% of the time, this pattern that we've covered for years, and we cover the original statement and then we cover the update. Almost all of the times that they make statements like this, something like that happens. Then they give and they do it. And once you start seeing that pattern, it's hard to not see it. Especially like statements like Belarus saying, the only way that we will join the Russian conflict in UKR is if they attack us directly. I fully suspect that there will be some sort of event, whether it's manufactured or completely constructed, that will happen, and Belarus will be able to say, well, they attacked us directly, and they will get involved. There's events like that all the time. Dex, do you disagree on that? Like, it just seems like, and by the way, that's a scary thought. Russian weapons, more advanced weapons in North Korea hands. South Korea probably doesn't want that.
I'm sure they don't want that, but let's be honest. It's not like what NK has. They developed in the same factories and capabilities. They developed that fine furniture we just saw, right? They got that stuff from their allies. The tech that they have now, including nuclear, you can pretty much assume it was given to them, or some leapfrogs were made with help from their friends, so to speak. So this threat, while it's probably somewhat meaningful, it's also somewhat obvious because it's been going on. But certainly, it wouldn't be a good idea if all sorts of other things start showing up there. But at the same time, it's not like Vlad has a surplus of equipment to be giving out. It seems like he needs just about everything he's got for his own troops at the moment.
And here's a older story, and just again, North Korea obtains EMP weapons from Russia that can now melt most of the electronics in Asia. It's like they've gotten a lot of stuff from Russia. That's why it's like they're a puppet, and that's why things like this, you don't know if you should take them seriously or not, or if this is going to start something, if it's going to be a big escalation or not. What is your opinion? Let me know in the comments down below. And thank you, by the way. Hey, nice to see you. We got lots of great people over on DLive, by the way. Thank you, Yobi. Thank you, Davos Von Scaro. Hey, thank you for saying hello and commenting on my tweets. Thank you. I appreciate it. I saw you over there. And I totally agree with you on that last tweet I responded to you too on. I actually responded. I said, isn't it crazy how fast things have changed? You were commenting on how it was during the last presidency. And since it was like that starting day to right now, 3 years, it's like the entire world has been turned on its head. And yes, mind you, a lot of that stuff was started during T-Man's thing, the Operation Warp. But one thing I do see right now, and whether you like T-Man or not, I think it's hard for people to see when they're being manipulated, whether people want to believe that they are coming up with the opinions themselves. I think that there's so many people that said, look at what the media is doing to T-Man, and they said, oh, they're just attacking him ruthlessly. Now there's this narrative, which I see, it's almost like bot-like, and people have absorbed it, that, oh, it's the old, pity old me kind of thing, right? Woe is me. And I've seen that so many places, and I've heard it from actual people saying, well, I'm just tired of T-Man's woe is me. But personally, if I put myself in in the shoes of that, and if it was what we think it was, and it was just completely that wretched, how could you let that go? It's such a horrific thing, and if that doesn't get flushed out as true and justice served for that, then I don't think we could keep going on as a planet. Like, that was, if that's what happened, then it is absolutely one of the worst crimes in humanity, if it hasn't been done every other time before. But again, the narrative on that has worked. Now people are being pushed towards DeSantis. But if you look at DeSantis, which I like DeSantis, I like how he talks and everything else, but all of these politicians are really good at getting us to like them and say, hey, that makes logical sense. Personally, I think that both sides of the aisle, all politicians, are shady as hell. They've all got people in their pocket, and they have to be. If they are getting to a governor or a Congress position, then they have people that they owe favors to, and that they will do things the second that they're in. They will totally go backwards. Every politician has flip-flopped on what they believe morally. Every politician that's on their campaign trail, when they go in, they do the exact opposite. Now, T-Man, he flip-flopped for sure, but man, it seemed like there was a lot of peace, and that's what a lot of people noticed. It was somewhat peaceful during that presidency, and it wasn't so crazy. All presidents have just completely, it doesn't matter who's in office, people are going to hate them. But I think it's artificial, and I think people are believing these pushes against, and I feel like a lot of it is social media and how media keeps pumping it, and if you tell a lie, a big enough lie enough, people will start believing it, and then it gets absorbed as true. So now people are getting pushed to DeSantis, and now RFK, Robert F. Kennedy, just announced that he will be running for president as well, which I don't know what that's going to do to it. Unfortunately, I don't think he could make it, but who knows? I think I think he would be, if you've read his book, it's unbelievable. I wasn't expecting it. What do you guys think? I actually did a survey on Twitter. Go over there and tell me what you think. If you only had 3 choices, and I know most of you are like, well, I wouldn't choose any of them. Pick none of the above. Over on Twitter, if you were to only had 3 choices, assuming that we get to pick anyways, if it's not, RFK Jr., DeSantis, or T-Man, which would you pick? In fact, we could do a survey right now. If you would pick RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy, press number 1. If you would pick DeSantis, press number 2. If you would pick T-Man, press number 3. And none of the above or other, 4. I'd love to see that. So RFK 1, DeSantis number 2, T-Man number 3, or none of the above, and it's okay to be completely on the opposite side, 4. But my thought is after a Democratic president, every time it switches. People are tired of this one, so they go to this one, they go to that one. So I think it will be a Republican president of their choosing. But who of their choosing will it be? And then Russia planning sabotage in Scandinavia sees to escalate conflict with the West, Scandinavian media reports says. Dex, what is going on with this?
Okay, so this new report came out, and it's covering the Scandinavian countries, like Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, etc. And I think Iceland and Greenland and a couple of small islands are in that as well. But anyway, point being, they put this report together, and this is coming off of some of the information we've reported in the past. If you recall, we talked about the alleged reports of spy ships, Russian spy ships around the wind power plants that were in the water. And they were suggesting that they were sort of mapping that out. Well, what they've come to find out is that they're now using ghost ships, which, for those of you who don't know, a ghost ship is a ship that turns off its transponders, so it goes dark on the map, so to speak. And they've been using these ships that have a dual purpose. They can be a research vessel, but they also use those vessels for reconnaissance. And they're saying that they have now been mapping out infrastructure. I would assume that would include power lines, connectivity from plants like the windmills that we talked about in the one instance that it was actually reported, as well as internet cables, other things like that, data cables, all of that. And now it's also being reported that they've seen the same exact ship. And by the way, they claimed when they went to one of these ships that it actually had soldiers on it, or at least the appearance of soldiers on it, carrying weapons and wearing balaclavas. But the balaclavas, sorry. But they did say that the exact same ship showed up over in an area where the Royal Air Force is. So it was in Scotland, about 30 nautical miles off of Losemouth, home of the RAF's Maritime Patrol aircraft fleet. So they're basically suggesting, with all the intelligence they've been able to gather from these past episodes that we've reported on, a few of them, and what they've been tracking and other things they've been looking at, that they're mapping out everything. And the purpose for mapping that out would be, what do you hit in the event of a conflict? What do you take out? What would you take out in advance of a conflict? Take out communications, take out power. Where does it all lie, and how is it all interconnected? And what would they need to do that? And that's what they're suggesting that Russia is in the midst of doing as we speak.
So, I mean, it's kind of set up right now for some sort of Fantastic Freddy. In multiple angles. So hopefully that does not happen. Not rooting for it, that's for sure. We don't want an escalation with Russia. Seems to me, though, I mean, most of us believe that this is going to happen. They're sending, if you look at what is going on with NATO right now, I mean, they're putting in fences now. We heard they were already digging trenches in Finland. Then we got official news that they are putting up this massive border fence, the 810 miles long. They're putting up huge sections of fences. They are getting ready for something. They also changed how NATO works. They're changing the responding rules. So, and I think we kind of corrected it, but it's kind of like NATO used to be. So if Russia invades into Finland, then Finland had the duty to essentially hold the ground until forces came. And, of course, they would get help, whatever else. But now they're doing it, so they're saying, we're just going to permanently put NATO there to be ready for it preemptively. So they are putting hundreds of thousands of troops coming up into NATO. And it was already talked about. It was kind of a soft open. They said, 300,000 NATO troops on the borders of Russia. And then they set up this rule. I can almost guarantee, this is my opinion, that very soon we will see a massive, massive number of NATO troops directly announced right to the border of Russia. They already have anti-tank measures in Poland. They already have trenches dug in Romania. They already have massive defensive lines set up on the Russian side of it. They're digging 45-mile trenches off of UKR's border up in the south. So I think that something is, I think that something is about to turn for the worse, and I'm hoping that that's not some sort of Fantastic Freddy that gets it all going. But there are chunks of us that just believe that this is going to happen. It's not something that really can be stopped at this point. It's like, how do we respond to it? How can we better prepare ourselves just to mentally deal with it, how to spiritually deal with what's going on, because it's not all about WW3. WW3, in my opinion, will be part of a greater picture that is going to change all of our lives in the way that they respond to it, in the way that they fix the problem, or in the way that happens. I mean, people are worried. Mainly, people are worried about dying. That's why people are afraid of World War III. I'm not afraid of dying for World War III. I'm more afraid of what the results from World War III will be. Who ends up at top? Or, what changes will be made? What temporary powers are given to the craziest people in charge of our countries that is able to control how we live? That's what I'm more worried about. What about you guys? Let me know. And then Kremlin uses secret weapon against Starlink in UKR. Dex, isn't it funny we were talking about how Starlink were just falling out of the sky? Do you think that this could be related?
Who knows? But this is kind of interesting that's what they're talking about now.
Why don't you go over this and then I'll get the next one. I'm gonna change batteries real quick.
So they're saying Russia is using, and this is coming, I think WAPO is the original breaker of this, but they're saying they were experimented for months with its Tubble electronic warfare system to try to disrupt Starlink's transmissions. So they have, for a while we have talked about, and others have talked about, their new electronic warfare system that can target satellites in up to like 36,000 kilometers height. So they haven't given out a lot of detail other than just a high level, like that they have this technology and it can take out satellites or disrupt satellites. We're not sure exactly what they're talking about doing here, if they're literally taking them out or if they're just blocking signals, like putting a laser beam in a camera causes the camera not to be able to see. But what is being reported is that they're actually using this specifically and have been testing it in the field against the SpaceX satellite. So there's no additional confirmation on this, but it's rather interesting the way they're reporting it. This is coming out from WAPO. It's also being pushed out by UKR News as well about this, but we're not sure if the outages that Starlink has seen, which have been recent, there have been some that have come and gone, were parts or had anything to do with this jamming technology, or if this is a jamming technology, or is this a destruction technology that could actually cause them to stop working, or maybe in the case not maintain orbit and fall out of the sky, as Elon reported. A whole bunch of these were coming back down. They weren't working correctly. So put it all together, throw a good grain of salt on it, but that's the story, and that's what they're telling us.
And again, with the Starlink, Davos von Scarlo said, wouldn't Elon be talking about this? He probably will. If this is true, then he will most likely be covering it. Again, all of our sources are over on marfooglenews.com. All of these will be updated. I bet you he's more focused on the launch tomorrow with the Mars spaceship. I mean, if you look at his Twitter, actually, if you think about that's kind of crazy. I just talked to somebody who talked about how they said that he is going through some sort of rough time right now, and they believe they know he's going through some sort of rough time. So I wonder if that's partly, and he hasn't tweeted other than about the SpaceX stuff. So I just wonder if he's been dealing with that, if that's something that will be talked about later. But usually all of his social media stuff, he's been talking about, Twitter and everything else, but now it's been about the SpaceX launch on 4/20. And by the way, somebody asked, and I forgot the name there. That's what we mean by Fantastic Freddy. So I'll try to have like a button I can push for when we use that, so then folks don't have to do it. It's actually one of the biggest things right there. Those words, and you know what the worst stuff is, when the stuff you can't talk about is the stuff that you should probably be talking about. All right. And U.S. jets intercept Russian Tu-95 bombers near Alaska. First encounter since the U.S. drone was taken down. So, one thing to note about this is we've had this happen so many times. I've covered these until I was blue in the face. as far as Alaska chasing off Russian planes, but we do cover them, especially big picture wise. If you archive these events and you're able to time and stamp when these things happen, this is going on in the same 3 weeks as all of these drills with China, all of these sightings of crazy Russian ships off of the coast, the ships off the East Coast, all of this. Could it be more serious than other ones? Probably not. All of these have been just kind of their show of strength, or they're flying by, or they're spying. But this happens so much that I don't think much of it. But at one point, one of these could be something. If there was an event, something like this could mean something. But we wouldn't be reading in the news. If we saw these and it mattered, then it wouldn't be like, it would be something much bigger would be on the headline than a couple jets off of the coast, if it was something. But they are always buzzing Alaska, and we're always chasing them off. This is something I've covered. Dex, what do you think? I think we've covered this like 40, 50 times over 4 years.
Yeah, we covered a lot. It happens all the time, but we do cover it, and we're going to cover it because it is insightful. It obviously it seems like they took a little break because we didn't hear about any since that drone incident. But at the same time, one day Tu-95s, if we go into conflict, then one day those Tu-95s that are buzzing by there are not going to buzz by there. They're just going to keep going. And it won't be a drill anymore. And that's why they do it. And I'm sure we do it to them. I'm sure they probably laugh and say, well, we chased off, US planes in this location and that location. Cause we probably do it a lot more, to them than they do to us. So, but at the end of the day, if it goes, from being a drill to being real, they're not stopping. They're going to keep going. And so that's why we as a country have to react to it and treat it every time as if it's, a potential incursion. What do we have to do? It does stress our own forces. It also causes us to react. It gives the adversary the ability to watch how we react and how we react to different locations, how long it takes us to react coming into different locations. So all of that is insight and practice, so to speak, on both sides.
And then let me ask the military here, as far as Russia, wouldn't they would also have targets in Alaska if they were doing the real thing? Don't we have some of our very strategic defense systems, especially regarding isn't there systems that can defend against a lot of stuff in Alaska? Couldn't they hit specific targets there? The thing is like with Taiwan, China goes in, they test the waters all the time. They keep pushing it a little bit further, a little bit further. They took 10 planes, then they took 15, then they took 20, then they took 25, they took 30. And they've done it so many times, people are desensitized to it, so it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. But then more and more and more and more and more it happens, and then people get used to it. And then all of a sudden, or in Taiwan's case, they're responding to it. Are they seeing how we're responding? And then when it's the real thing, it wouldn't just be 2 jets there or 2 Tu-95 bombers. It would be probably 5 there, 7 here, 5 there. And if they can get close as they possibly can without too much alarm, like, oh, they're up there again, and actually hit targets, then that's something that could happen as well. Real quick, if you don't have survival food or any kind of backup food, this is a really great resource for affordable freeze-dried food that can last 25 years. Go to marfooglenews.com/prep. This not only will stock you up for 3 months if you get the preferred plan, where you'll get $200 off on it, but you will also have food that is inflation safe. As far as the price on freeze-dried food over the last 3 years has tripled. If this triples again in 3 years from now, and crazy prices into the thousands, then you will still have 22 years left on the shelf, and you will have that food, and you won't have to pay that triple price. I can only imagine what this will be in 10 years, and you'll still have 15 years left on the clock. So this is great to have, not for WW3, but just for any emergency in general. The food is one of their main staples, but they also have other things like anti-radiation pills. They have gadgets. They, of course, have all sorts of survival gear. So make sure to go check it out. And if you want to see some of the other things they have, they also have 72-hour kits. They have go kits. They have week supplies. They have all sorts of other stuff, including what I highly recommend is getting the meat bucket along with the 3-month, because then that complements all of the stuff that's in the 3-month plan, and you can add a whole lot of substance to that as far as with the meat bucket. Sounds so gross, but in freeze-dried, it's essentially a huge package of all sorts of different freeze-dried meats. That's marfugglenews.com/prep. And again, you will get a huge discount, and you'll be backing yourself up for 3 months. All right, and that's marfugglenews.com/prep. Thank you guys for supporting Independent, and thank you for also, again, backing yourself up. Russian hacking is surging as Putin targets Britain, warns spy chiefs. So there's also been warnings. Davos group, not you, Davos Vanscaro, but the Davos meeting that went down. Yeah, Davos, yeah. The Davos meeting, they had a very alarming stat or prediction that they came out with. And they said that 93% of the world's top, most elite cybersecurity experts say that there is a high possibility of a catastrophic cyber event happening in the next 2 years. Mind you, this is already a few months old. So we're talking about in the next 20 months or 21 months. And this is just in their thing. In the next 2 years, right? From 23 to 25, which oddly lines up with all of the crazy prophecies. But a cyber event like that, and 86% of the world's top most elite business leaders, so the CEOs of Targets and Microsofts and these and that, and all of the folks that were at this group, it was a majority of them believe that there will be some sort of, believe there's a high possibility of a catastrophic cyber event happening. When you see stuff like this may be kind of a tee up, like whoosh, to another one of these, or this very well could be what is happening. It says Western nations are battling a surge in Russian hacking activity as Vladimir Putin's cyber troops set their sights on critical infrastructure. So just let that soak in. I know that most of you do take this stuff seriously, or at least part of the back of your brain puts this in and goes, okay, maybe we should worry about this kind of stuff just a tiny bit, and have this, not be side swiped by this. Cabinet Office Minister Oliver Dowden and Russian-aligned hackers want to disrupt or destroy critical infrastructure such as power stations. He added that these are fringe state threats, the cyber equivalent of the Wagner Group, and initially these groups focused their attacks on UKR and the surrounding region. But recently they have begun to turn their attention to UK and its allies. Criminal hacker groups in Russia have increasingly been targeting Western countries in recent months, especially NATO members supporting UKR. Who would be the biggest one there? Well, obviously, the UK has something to worry about, and the US. What we all worry about is if it's actually a three-letter agency doing it to further some sort of agenda, rather than them as well. So there's multiple angles where this kind of thing could happen. Experts say that patriotic young Russians are carrying out cyber attacks against Western organizations and businesses. So this is in the same week where we saw Southwest Airlines again nationwide grounding of their planes, and they said it was technical errors. In the last few months, we had the New York Stock Exchange shut down because of some sort of glitch where essentially a ton of stock was moving all at once, which could have been a technical glitch, or people could have really, gotten a heads up or something and really were moving so much stock. But there's been a lot of weird technical glitches. And what I stress is that what we have told you guys for 5 years, and we've shown you how the path has gotten worse. This is something I really do hope everybody is making a basic plan with their friends and family. We are so close. You can smell this disaster. And it's not to scare people. You shouldn't be afraid. If you watch the show long enough, then you are desensitized to the scare factor of it, and you're more focused on just being spiritually and mentally prepared for this kind of stuff so it doesn't scare you. Yeah, the underlining thing is everybody's afraid of dying. This is more like, this is a change of life type thing if this happens. If we have a massive event. If the UK needs to worry right now, then we here in the US should be as well. Dex, do you want to add to that? Obviously they're putting out lots of notices in the last year.
You know, we used to see a lot more, or we used to hear a lot more about these cyber events, and then this last year it hasn't been as much because I guess they've been focusing their time on doing their cyber activities against UKR. But we've also had these little things go off here and there that we've been calling technical glitches. So we don't know what's really behind that word technical glitch, because it's a nice shield that allows them to just say there's a technical glitch. We're not going to tell you what really happened, but it's a technical glitch and you don't understand, so you don't need to understand, so just take that and run with it, right? So there's a little piece in there in my mind that says we ought to look at some of those technical glitches and think that there's probably something going on. I think, though, that if they are now shifting, as this report is saying, away from just attacking infrastructure and things like that in UKR, where the battle field sort of lies, and they're going beyond, that we may start to see that uptick. And I question, will we actually announce it? Will we actually say it's happening, or are we going to keep throwing up this technical glitch shield that we've just so frequently seen?
I mean, you look at massive technical glitch, the first thing that pops up, and I accidentally went to the oogs instead of the duck, but it says massive chaos across U.S. airports after technical glitch, and most of them are related to that. But it actually has one, SpaceX scrubs Starship launch after technical glitch. Interesting, since today we went over this stuff where they supposedly were attacking Starlink, so I bet SpaceX is probably open game for them too. But when you look this up on DuckDuckGo, you'll see there's so many of these, and it's kind of like the other thing that everybody was looking up, like that keyword that you would search and you would find all of these different odd Google. It didn't matter what state, all of these people suddenly, you know what I'm talking about. So it's just it's crazy how many technical glitches are happening right now. And Pentagon UFO leader who penned alien mothership paper to testify before Senate. Dex, and just to remind people, the UFO mothership thing, Avi Loeb, the Harvard professor that essentially questioned and even theorized that Oumuamua might have been a scout, like a alien ship, which it sounds crazy, but it did accelerate and punch on the gas after it passed by Earth from outside of our solar system, from outside of our universe, and then punched it and sped up on its own after swinging really close to Earth. I mean, if you looked at it, when you look at where it came, it was like, oh, just peeking on Earth, and then phew, jetted out. Very odd. Not to mention it was shaped like a cigar. It was huge, whatever else. But they actually said in this Pentagon paper, and really what it is this guy's on this committee, and it's him saying it, that there very well could be a mothership sending scouts to Earth. If this doesn't trigger all the folks that have been talking about a false alien invasion, then I don't know what would. We've talked about that. Now, it looks like one of these going to talk in front of the Senate. Dex, what do you think that they'll end up? What do you think they'll end up doing here?
So the person who's actually getting to speak with the Senate is Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. He is the director of the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, also known as ARROW. And he has been credited along with Avi Loeb as co-authoring that paper. Now, I think Avi Loeb put a version of that out long before, because we've talked about Avi Loeb and Oumuamua for years now. I think he just, finally got to bring that to the forefront with the creation of this office and working with Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. So, but apparently, whoever is the director probably holds higher rank, and that's who's speaking. And he's going to be providing testimony. He's the only person that will be speaking on behalf, basically to discuss the mission, the activities, the oversight, and the budget. We don't know if any other. I'm sure they'll ask questions. I'm sure somebody's going to say, "Did you see aliens yet?" But we don't know what'll come from that. I'm sure we'll hear some reports if there's anything very interesting that is actually revealed from the Aero Group and what they're doing. That group was created in 2022. It is part of the Pentagon, and it's was to identify and any of what they're calling UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomenon, as the Pentagon likes to call it, UFOs as we like to call it. So anyway, that's the group, that's the Pentagon group, and they've been the ones publishing papers, putting out information, collecting and doing the research and digging into all the other intel that I guess they're allowed to have access to discover and research the UAP phenomenon. And they're going to be getting grilled in front of the Senate soon, I guess tomorrow.
So we'll see, and we'll update you on what ends up happening. Ian DeBow, by the way, thank you, Rita Dawn. Thank you for the super sticker. Thank you, Itchiander. Thank you so much for the super sticker as well. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. And then Ian DeBow says, 2 big stories I'm not seeing talked about. The UN is actively calling for the decriminalization of with minors, and Washington State House bill won't report location of minors seeking a sex change. I believe they can actually even take custody of them if the parents refuse. Oh yeah, it's a big deal. I mentioned it the other night. HR 5581 or 5, whatever it is. It's a huge deal here. I got texts all day from friends and family that couldn't believe it. Especially they were talking about, children. And if you refuse, then you're basically put in the same category as somebody who, beats them or something. That's what I heard, at least. And I don't know enough about it to comment on that. As far as the decriminalization of stuff with that, I don't know enough about that either. In fact, I believed I saw it just today. So I don't know how old that is. But I do believe we put something related to that in web only maybe a couple days ago. But Dex, as far as the new stuff that came out on the UN thing, can we get that onto the web only? I don't believe we have it on today's show. And verify it.
I'll look for it.
Okay. I'm going to turn this off for a second. I mean, it's not surprising to me. Look at what's happening. I was just watching a video, I think it was Walsh or something, talking about the Sam Smith video. I totally missed this video that came out 2.5 months ago. Everybody was talking about the Sam Smith, the unholy video thing. And that wasn't as nuts as the Sam Smith video a couple months ago. And I'm sure if I had time to watch every one of Jacob Israel's video, I would be surprised if Jacob Israel did not cover that video, because it is so disturbing. Do you remember how R. Kelly offended absolutely everyone and everybody thinks he's an absolute disgusting pervert? What did he do? Do you remember the gross thing he did? And you don't have to listen in chat. Everybody knows. He did things, and they even made parodies of it. In fact, Dave Chappelle made funny parodies about it, right? And it was so disgusting and whatever that people laughed at that when it happened. Sam Smith is now making videos of people in like S&M costumes. I mean, this is what is, that our kids are completely exposed to all of this because there really isn't much filtration on the internet and everything else. And it's why lately I've just been really hurt as far as remembering how I grew up and how we didn't have instant everything. If you wanted to look up something, it was objective truth in an almanac you probably got from a door-to-door salesman. And you learned that way. You didn't have 50,000 theories for absolutely everything. You had an imagination. You played outside. You didn't have all of this stuff. And I know it sounds just like when we were kids and there were older folks thinking like rap music was, so disrespectful and immoral. Now, they would just be absolutely going nuts. I mean, look at what is happening right now. But they show in this video, on top of them in buttless chaps, grinding the floor, and he's wearing, covers on his things and wearing this dress thing. Fine, go ahead. They add shots that are representing urination. And then he goes like this and opens his mouth and what is, like, that's not, I'm sure that most progressives are like, what are you doing? Why is that okay? Why is that like, this is something that's going to be on the radio, played a million times, and that if it's on the radio, kids are going to look up that video, and it doesn't matter what kind of parental controls people have, they'll be able to go somewhere else with their friend, or now friends in second grade have cell phones. They're going to be able to access this stuff. That's what it's like, I feel like the old man on my lawn saying, get off my lawn. But it's happened so fast. We didn't even have computers when we were kids. And I'm not old. We don't know what this is going to do to society. I mean, look at how drastic our world has changed in the last 3 or 4 years. And if you say anything against it, then, oh, you're this, you're that. But when it comes down to it, for thousands of years, up until like just a couple of years ago, most of these things were just accepted as normal thoughts to have. Now, there's an artificial push to make you think that you are something bad if you have something bad to say about it. What's crazy is every other religion is protected, but the one that goes against what all is happening right now, that is the one that's being attacked. And even 10 years from now, could be canceled for even saying that. It's so flippin' horrendous. So, Ian DeBow, I agree with you. It's just absolutely nuts what's going on right now, and I don't know where it's coming from. You would think after EpiPen and all that thing got out, you'd think there would be bigger calls to stop stuff like that. To stop anything that might be shown to children with S&M and all this Balenciaga stuff. It's disturbing. I think that both sides, that should be a bipartisan, like, gross. But no, instead, and heavily TikTok. And where's TikTok? TikTok all over it. There's people doing this stuff, and they think this is cool now. Sorry, went on a side rant. But I do have to say, now people, they're popularizing people having sister wives and sister husbands. The sister wives have been around for a long time. I watched that show way too much because my wife watched it. But the sister husbands, that's a thing now. People having like quadruples and quadruples and all of this stuff. I mean, if there was ever a modern day Sodom and Gomorrah, we're right there. Nickel-wise, challenge all. Give 5 for equipment, allow for call-ins. Nickel-wise, we are almost there. Thank you for that, but you don't have to do that, guys. And call-ins are coming back soon. I did find kind of a workaround until then. I can turn it off and on real quick, and that may get us by until we can. And then Andrew Golden, thank you. Itchy Ander, I appreciate you. And then Bus Pants, thank you for speaking the truth. And what sucks, Andrew, is I don't know if the new one will fix it. No sound person has been able to tell us why it does it. So even after I go get another mixer, I don't know if it's absolutely going to fix it. And that's going to be devastating because it's a big purchase. And then Google's rush to win in AI led to ethical lapses, employees say. I actually believe this. If you look at what is happening with the AI, I could not believe this. I just heard this on Redacted. Samsung is going to be pushing more phones onto Bing because Bing has the ChatGPT 4 or whatever, or ChatGPT ingrained. Bing has always been the worst search engine. Like, no one uses Bing. But I guarantee you, people will now that it's going to be baked into phones. If it's baked into phones, people will start using it. People will start getting used to it. Technically, they had a smart idea in the first place. Only have it a small word, Bing. It's easy. Why do people use this one instead? Because it was catchy. But they're trying to catch up with that. Bard, their system is just clunky. It's not the same. And what's happening now is, since they're all racing to get to this first and not have the inferior thing, they're basically skipping all sorts of stuff. Redacted mentioned how Redacted mentioned how they got rid of Microsoft got rid of their entire ethical department, or one of the departments that would actually be handling that, because they were laying off because of all the crazy stuff going on. Ethical lapses is something that really is well, I think you could apply that to basically the last 3 years everywhere. But so Dex, do you want to talk about the Bard and Bard, their version, and what's going on with this?
Yes, certainly. So they had basically what the story is about is the insight from the OOG's employees, and the reason why it's important is when they were introducing Bard, they first gave it to the employees and asked the employees to test drive it and see how it was working, and some of the quotes were it was a pathological liar. Some of them called it cringeworthy. They basically came up with a lot of things that said, hey, it doesn't even seem like ethics are even being applied here. They were sort of dumbfounded with how this tech was rolling out, and they were supposed to be the first testers of it. So that's what a lot of these sound bites are coming from that are making up this. I want to add one other thing, though, just putting it into the frame. A couple things I want to add, putting into this framework of the OOG. In that interview this week on Tucker with Elon, Elon actually made a comment about Larry, one of the co-founders of the OOG, saying that he once told him, and this was when he was hanging out with him, they were friends, and he was working with him in person a lot. Elon said that Larry told him that he being Larry or OOG, is trying to build a quote unquote digital god. And that's what they thought of AI, and that's what they thought of the data, and that's what they thought of the entire platform that they're building, is how did they get to this place of being considered a digital god. So that's kind of crazy when you think about it. And then, you start to see the tech that they're trying to roll out. And obviously, in this case, ChatGPT just threw a complete monkey wrench in them, in the sense that it leapfrogged out in front. And all of a sudden, the big tech behemoth was behind the 8 ball and start scrambling to get their tech, which wasn't doing really well, out. And it's not heading in the right direction. Now, the other point I would like to make, go back on the Bing story, I'm not a fan of either of them, but it would be nice to see a giant like them be leveled, in the sense of leveled with another platform that we don't just have that giant monopoly on search or on our interface to the internet, right? That's really what search kind of is like the stepping point of where do you want to go, what are you looking for, what do you want. They have basically had a monopoly on it for all practical purposes. So if somebody else comes along and at least takes that throne away, that would be nice. Not that I trust the other person either, but it would at least be nice to see the playing field leveled a little bit there. So, but back to the story around AI. That's what's happening here with this is the inside information from the employees and what they were having to say towards it. And not good, and probably why a lot of people are criticizing Bard quite a bit, and they've got a lot of work to do.
And I just wanted to add a couple of the examples here of what they were talking about. Like cringeworthy, one employee wrote that when they asked Bard suggestions for how to land a plane, it regularly gave advice that would lead to a crash. Or in another example, it gave answers on scuba diving, which would likely result in serious injury or death. So I could just think of one example of how fast can you come up? And it says, if you're down 400 meters, you can just swim up as fast as you can. And of course, you would get the bends and probably die, right? So they're saying those kind of ethical questions are there. Like they're just totally skipping over stuff. Everyone is talking about AI now. I just want to point out this is funny. You go to speaking of which, this kind of fits into all of it. If you go to the search bar up at the upper right hand corner, and you type in singularity, right? It shows all of the shows going back years. I've been talking about this for years. Dex and I have been talking about this for years. It shows all the shows that we talk about singularity. If you type in AI, it will go into all the shows, but specifically singularity, these 4 shows. But if you go into AI, we've talked about this for years, and we knew, this is something that all of us and you guys saw this from a very long time ago. Now, because it's mainstream media, everybody is talking about it, and everybody is saying, now everybody's talking about it. We have been covering this, and we've been warning people on this for years. People are not wrapping their heads around it, and they won't. And everybody's example, in fact, Clayton and a few others, and Tucker, and I just saw a Fox News lady random clip of them talking about a gentleman came on who was an expert on it, and they did the whole don't look up like news, like peppy. Oh, so is it gonna kill us all? But they all say that, oh well, it's because it's been science fiction. Forget about the science fiction. This is now our world, and people need to fight back against it. People need to speak up on AI, and they need to wrap their heads around how bad this is. So make sure you do some basic research if you are completely unknowing about what AI is and what singularity is. They're saying in the next few years, that's AI becoming more complex than the human brain, and exponentially it will get worse from there. We are almost there. That is the scariest thing we could ever run into. Let's go over the web only. We have a lot of crazy stuff here. Real quick, before we do though, I do want to say thank you to Bus Pants, Itchy Yonder. Thank you. Ilea says, I read that paper. They said potential UFOs would have biological beings because they wouldn't survive the long trek. AI would be piloting biological beings. They wouldn't have biological beings because they wouldn't survive the long trek. But then there comes Star Trek theory that they would be cryogenically frozen or have warp drive or something. But yeah, unless they're cryogenically frozen. But who knows? Maybe there might be a science that we don't know exists. Bus Pants, thank you for speaking the truth, and thanks for your work. Thank you, Itchy Andrew Golden, Nickel Wise, Rita Dawn, again, Charles Goki, Carol, Zen1AZ, Joseph Newhouse, Ray the Way, Michael Tanner, and FG, Nana of Montana, K. Parker Fraser, of course, Fairies of Venus, and Sweatna Ministries, and Danish Girl. Thank you so much for your support this week. Dex, let's go over the web only. We have a lot of crazy stuff here, and I'm going to update this.
Absolutely. So head over to...
Did I cut out again? I'm sorry.
You're good.
Okay, cool. Head over to marfooglenews.com. Click on the thumbnail for the show, or the easiest way, just open up that show notes link. It's down below in the description. It'll take you to this webpage that is for tonight's show. It's going to have all the articles we just talked about, and then you get to this overflow section, this orange bar. It's the rest of the story. So the entire political stuff is front and center at the moment. There's a lot going on around DeSantis and T-Man, and matter of fact, I think his former CFO was just released from jail. There's a lot of other things going on, including some stuff happening with one of the Supreme Court justices. So if you want to get caught up on all that, we have it. It's there, a good handful of it. We do have some financial stuff happening about real estate around UK inflation numbers are at 10%. And some other updates around that. Of course, we've got a little bit of the AI. There's interesting things going on with copyright in AI, as well as what some of the magazines are using AI to do, and the controversies that that's creating. That's there. And some interesting fertility stuff. They're trying to actually create eggs without using any humans. They're just creating them out of nothing, I guess. But if you want to check that out and read the details of it, you can. All of that's there. Of course, I mentioned the financial stuff, the AI stuff, and then of course we've got the updates around the de-dollarization, which we've talked about. The fact that, and as the thumbnail shows, the potential collapse of and changing of the economics that are happening right now before our eyes. It's pretty significant. And then we've got the updates in UKR, what's been going on with, in addition to the stories we've already talked about, there's been plenty of other things. And there's an interesting thing about what's going on in with seeding, and I'm going to leave the first word out. That is, now I'll say it, is the word cloud, and those things going together, which we all know what that is, but they're now talking about how it's being used again in the Rocky Mountain drought. So that and a whole lot more, it's all right there on our website. We put it together for you every night. Just go to marfooglenews.com, click on the thumbnail for the show, or open up that link right down below in the description called the show notes link.
And I want to point out the future of fertility. We talked about this last year. This is something that if you, again, like I mentioned, full circle here, like the show Utopia. And again, I found Utopia late. Like all of my friends found that way years ago. I just couldn't believe how much like kind of real stuff they threw in there. And of course, you could say all of it's fake, but there was some real stuff that they threw in there as well. And it's just so freaky. If you haven't seen Utopia, go watch the 2012 version because it's more full. It didn't get canceled because they did the 2020 version at the beginning of CV, and they said it was too close. They had to put a disclaimer saying that this isn't real. So I would say watch the 2020 version, but if you don't want to be left with a cliffhanger, it explains everything. But fertility in general, this is something that needs to be talked about and raised to the top of priorities as well. It's something that I think is being overlooked. They're talking about growing babies in labs and things and all of this stuff. This is freaky. This is something we talked about last year. The idea of this was going into place, and they were talking about they were doing patents, and we were talking about the patents. This is coming. They don't want us. They don't want us to have our own children. They want to create, and they don't want excess. They don't want the wrong people procreating, and I think that's eventually where that's going. So make sure to go check it out. Check out that. You can find that on marfooglenews.com. All right, thank you, Dex. I appreciate your service tonight. Thank you, Mods.
Much love. Great job, brother.
And thank you, Mods. Make sure to go check them out, marfooglenews.com/friends. Thank you over on DLive. And we're going to be switching over to Jams. If you don't have yourself subscribed over to Marfoogle Jams, if you do want to hear our silly shoutro, it's not an outro, it's not a shout out, it's a shoutro, then go ahead and subscribe over there. And then Davos von Skraro says, #1, protect the children. Yobi, evening, y'all. Thank you. And Luftwaffe, appreciate you. Be safe, be prepared, and Marf out. Word about what your damn status say. When the world's on the slide and it's passing away. Dark clouds that are on their way. We ain't riders on this ride, we cast away. Word about what your damn status say. When the world's on the slide and it's passing away. Dark clouds that are on their way. We ain't riders on this ride, we cast away. Word about what your damn status say. When the world's on the slide and it's passing away. your damn